This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and it's a privilege to be with you today. Today, we've got another amazing show with another amazing guest that's going to talk about some very important things about leadership. It's about how to lead, how to overcome adversity, how to change and grow in as your organization changes and grows, how to evolve your people in that process. Today we have an expert in leadership, literally wrote the book on it. We'll get into that here in just a minute. Today we have the privilege of Miss Cheryl Mobley being on our podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about Cheryl. Cheryl's the founder and CEO of a company called Recalibrate, which is a boutique business advisory firm that helps maximize the performance of organizations in a very sustainable manner. Not only that, she is also a keynote speaker at major events. She's an author of a book called Face to Face. This is about leadership, and this is about getting the best out of people and obviously running organizations to the best of their ability. Leadership equals organizational excellence, and we're going to learn about her. So welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
We are excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about your journey. You've got an interesting story, growing up in your career. It led you to being the president of a medical group, a hospital, and then, into business advisory consulting that you're doing now. So tell us a little bit about you and this journey and how you got to where you are today and why you're so doggone good and passionate about leadership and organizational excellence.
Well, I will say that I will absolutely own the passionate, but the good we can always get better, right? I make myself and other people crazy because it's like, it's good, that's awesome. What's next? So for me, I was kind of the quintessential child. All the women in my family did medical in some way, shape, or form, and healthcare. And I'm like, no, not going to do it. And so ultimately, of course, I find myself in healthcare, right? It's funny how that works. And so I was, my dad was a VP of marketing for an international organization at a national level, an executive. And I'm like, the thought of sales and deadlines and targets, don't even talk to me. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know about it. And I certainly don't want to be in the position of having to rip people because we're not making our targets. I was like, everything in me was like, no. So you put those two things together, and of course, what do I end up doing, right? So I ultimately ended up doing quality and risk management was where I started in healthcare. And quality is very proactive, right? It's like, how do you become the best you can become? Risk management is how do you not screw up? I'm real broad brush, but I mean, that's kind of what it is. And so then I was asked to take on operations. So I took on operations. And then ultimately I was asked if I would serve as president. And ironically enough, the hospital system, healthcare system, had their first, what they call hypo or high potential program. And I was one of, 30 some odd people in it. And I remember saying to the person that was my direct connection, the organization at the time was about 23,000 employees, not counting physicians, right? So good size, right? And he was third in command. And I had said to him, I said, don't ask me to be president. I don't want to be president. That's not what I want to do. And of course he calls me and says, will you do it? And I'm like, really? I mean, really, you're asking me. He's like, I know. And normally we ask for 5 years if you just do it for 2. And I'm like, okay, right. So that was how I became a hospital president, right? It was nothing. People were like, oh, what was your journey? What was your path? And I'm like, there was avoidance, right? That was my journey. That was my path. But what I did, somebody asked me a question a while ago, and I thought it brought something up that I do want to share. Whatever you're doing, do it to the best of your ability. right? So I was asked to take on other roles like the operations because I didn't stay in my box and go, that's not my job. It's not in my job description. It's like, it needs to be done. I'm going to go do it. And it was that kind of attitude and approach that was a stair step. So I would say for anybody listening who wants to do more than they're doing now or do different, right? Because sometimes different is a bigger risk for people to pull you into. It's just rock whatever you're doing. Go above and beyond. And I'm not talking about don't oversleep and be a workaholic. That's not what I'm saying. But if you see something that needs doing, go after it and do it in an amazing way. So ultimately, that's how we ended up becoming president. And the way healthcare is measured in the US, most hospitals are measured against each other by Medicare, because Medicare is a common payer, right? Anybody over 65 and a few other people. So they tend to set the terms and say, you will tell us how you're doing on this, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. And this is how much we're going to pay you. So you then get compared to all the other hospitals that report into that system. And our particular hospital, because in my system, I was not running the system. I was the president of a hospital in the system. There's about 15 hospitals at the time, and probably 5,000-ish hospitals in the Medicare database. And so when we ended up hitting the 99th percentile performance, that's our hospital against all the other hospitals in the country that are reporting. And for people who maybe like me and who go, what does that mean? I'm like, well, it just means we're kind of like at the top, right? I don't know that there is a 100th percentile, right? I mean, that's just not the way it works. But that was where we consistently lived. And to me, if you're going to do it, whatever it is, then that's just what you do, right? You do the absolute best that you can. And as I said, I started in quality. And you and I were talking before, and I'm really annoying with the questions, right? And we would go in and we would have targets that people would set. And it would say, well, if you weren't told what the target would be, I sat in a meeting, one of my first meetings, and somebody says, well, we're shooting for 70%. And I'm like, excuse me? Well, why? Well, we don't want to depress anybody because we're not going to make 100%. So we want to make it better than we are now. And I'm like, no. Right?
Wow.
We shoot for 100. We shoot for perfection. Which of you wants to tell the 3 family members that we just didn't think we could quite do it? So we're just going to rock it 70% of the time. No. And I'm not faulting people for that. Part of it is you get judged on how close you come, right? So in some ways, if the target is not set for you, you're kind of defaulting to try and make yourself look good by just squeaking up a little bit. And I'm like, no, this is not how we do this. And so this goes back to what we were talking about, a little bit before. It's like, whatever you do, do your best. But for us, and I had some pushback. I had some people that I was not their favorite person, but I'm like, no, under my watch, we are not shooting for 70%. Sorry.
Wow.
Never, ever. So, but that attitude carried forward into being president, and I fully expected to be a wreck because that's a lot of responsibility to be a hospital president. And I wasn't, and I was kind of like, well, what, aren't I? I was kind of baffled by why I wasn't. But I realized for me, having responsibility for the quality of the care that I'd had for years, to me, that's what was important. That's what was vital. That was everything that we were trusted to do. The money, all that other stuff, yeah, that's got to be done. It's got to be managed, or you don't exist to take care of your people. But to me, that was the heavier weight. So the president on top of the quality was like, But I told my boss, I said, we will absolutely do the best we can every single day. And if we blow past the targets you give us in April or September, it doesn't matter. We're just going to keep on trucking. That being said, if you set unreasonable targets for us, I'm not going to lose sleep over it either.
Yeah,
I'm just,
really.
And it's like, so it was that balance. And I think that candor, my boss had said to me, he said, the one that asked me to be president, he goes, your transition was kind of a non-event. It just happened. And I think that's part of what people can bring to the table is we all have someone we report to. I don't care who you are. As president, I had a direct boss. I had a board. We had people that trusted us to take care of them. We had people that trusted us to come to work for us and with us. So all of those people have a stake in it, but at the end of the day, it's like, we're here to do something. And we want to take care of each other, but we're here to do something, And so that's one of the things for me that is just so vital. It's like to keep that focus, whatever it is for your organization, because it's different, right, in everyone. But ultimately, I transitioned out of that role. I ended up being president for 5 years.
Wow.
And I transitioned out because I was running into people who were just like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I'm like, oh, they don't know how to do it. I should help. Right. So that's really
Yeah.
that was kind of my kick in the pants to leave, because it's like we had the system going, and it certainly wasn't dependent just on me, and any leader that thinks it is really mistaken. We had an amazing team of people, and I knew you could pull me out, and they just keep right on going. And so, that's set, that's solid, but there's a lot of other people that are going, I don't know what to do. Or I tried what I thought was right and it blew up in my face. And now I really, thank you very much, don't want to try anything. And so that's ultimately why I left and started Recalibrate, was just to be able to say, if you want to do this, and as a coach, you know this, about 2%
Yep.
of the world wants to do the work. And it's no different for this, which lines up pretty accurately with 99th percentile performance, right? You've only got a small number of people that want to engage you, right, for your services, that are willing to put the work in to shift where they're capable of delivering. And it's the same thing for people running organizations. And so I had no intention of being there for everybody, because anybody who's like, yay, 70% was not going to want to work with me. And I wasn't going to work with them. Because what I tell people all the time is, you are a finite resource. You are, like it or not. And when you make a decision to do one thing, you're making a decision not to do something else, whether you mean it or not. And because I'm a finite resource, I'm really not going to work with people who don't want to get there. Because why? Because there are people that do.
Yeah.
And so it's just that kind of focus. So there's a long answer to your question, but that's how that kind of came about.
Wow. What a story. I think, especially in hospitals, like if I'm laying there with my arm cut off and I'm depending on somebody in some hospital to take care of me and do things for me and rehabilitate me, save my life, and they come in, they're like, we're kind of busy today. We're only going to be able to give you 70% of the care that you really need to stay alive. Hope for the best. Sorry. Boy, that's not very convincing. I'm like, me as a patient, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go ahead and die right now then, 70%. Like,
Well,
so
let me give an update to this, because it's not that everything was set that way, because I don't want to leave people with the impression that it's a roll of the dice if they live or not, right?
yeah,
But to me, every metric deserved 100%. Some metrics immediately affect a patient outcome, and those are non-negotiable to most people at 100% anyway.
yeah,
That's a given. But when I first started, it was just kind of in its infancy. There were still targets that people were setting themselves. And I was pretty ruthless, because coming into it, healthcare was, and I'm getting up there, right? So this has been a while. This isn't the last 2 years. But healthcare had kind of said, oh, well, it's healthcare. We can't, you can't compare us to anybody else, and we can't really learn from other people because it's all different. And so, we're going to do the best we can. And I'm like, that's bogus. And so I came in when that transition was already beginning, and people were going, no, that's not okay. So a lot of the standards that are set, in my opinion, are set because healthcare as an industry didn't step up and police itself. And so someone else did. There's a lot of challenges with the metrics. So again, they're not necessarily accurate. There are metrics that hospitals are forced to gather that really are a waste of time and do take away from patient care, but you still don't have any choice. So it's always a complicated view. And so I certainly don't want to leave the impression with anybody that, oh, did they get an infection? Oh, yeah, I was supposed to wash my hands, but I didn't. Those sorts of things were routinely set that, like, you will be perfect.
yeah,
To me, everything deserves that level of attention. And that's where I was. And again, it was at that transition time when some metrics I didn't think were getting the attention that they deserved, but a lot of really amazing people disagreed with me, and so it's a style issue as well as an approach issue. And for our particular hospital, when you work inside a system, you have your hospital and you have kind of the system is kind of corporate, and so you have a lot of things that are going back and forth. So as when I was doing quality, I was working not only with my hospital, but with a lot of other people. And so it was in some of those earlier conversations where people were setting the bar a little low. Now, I'm not saying they were going to be permitted to keep it that low, but it was definitely kind of, and you know what it's like in that transition period. People are like,
Yep.
it's, to me, I don't ever get jazzed about 60%, 70%, even 80% or 90%. I just don't. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect, because I'm not. As long as I'm breathing, I will not be perfect. That's just a given.
Yeah.
But to set for anything less than we're going to shoot for being absolutely amazing and as close to flawless as humanly possible, we did amazing things in the hospital because we had an amazing team. And I'm like, this is our goal, 0 of this. Let's go figure it out. And y'all go do it. You know what you need to do. You're the people at the front lines. You tell me what you need. You tell me if you're not getting what you need. And let's do this. And they did amazing things that were able to be spread to the entire system and help patients we never saw.
Yeah.
And so a lot of really amazing work. And it translates. It doesn't matter what your industry is. Healthcare, obviously, is high stakes. Healthcare has a lot of people telling you what you're going to measure, how they're going to pay you. So it's got extra complexity that some industries aren't blessed with,
Yep.
But at the end of the day, if you're going to do something, do it. And
Yeah.
so and we worked with a lot of amazing people who did a lot of wonderful things, but they weren't always living at 99th percentile performance.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the difference. It's like, how do you do that and still have a life, and make it an amazing experience for everyone you touch?
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. So yeah, you're known out there to be the 99% person, right? I think you even have like a program or something you've created. It was a B99, right? All right. So, be 99%, right? Nobody's ever 100. Nobody ever achieves 100. If you do, you achieve it for about 3 seconds and then something changes. And then all of a sudden, you're not 100 anymore, right? But
Right.
definitely 99. Like I know, I've got a technology background, right? And in the technology space, people measure things like, network uptime and availability time. 99, there's never 100. I've never in 30 years seen anybody be 100% of anything, right? The goal was what they call 5 nines,
Mhm.
99.999% uptime, that's pretty good. That means the network and the computers and all the systems were available pretty much all day, except for maybe one blip at 12 o'clock at night for 3 seconds. Like it's pretty darn good. And so I think that especially working in the medical space, it's so critical. I mean, you're literally talking life and death
Mhm.
in setting that standard. I like how you challenged your folks that came in with a 60-70% mentality, right? Um, in some areas of the world, coming in with they're so busy, got so many things going on, especially like project based, where you get to a 70-75% solution and you keep moving forward, right? It's good enough. I had a boss tell me that one time. He said, look, Jason, we're so doggone busy, you're going to get buried if you try to achieve 100% perfection in every single thing we do all the time. You're like the waves of activity are just going to drown you. So you need to get to about a 70% solution and move on. And he was right in that specific environment. But in this environment you're talking about, you know, 99%, definitely is the standard for, majority of the things that are going on. So I like your edge. I like, how you set a high standard of excellence and brought people up in the hospital. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, your hospital is one of the top performing hospitals out there, um, out there at that time. Is that right?
Yeah, with the metrics that we were measured on, both externally and internally, absolutely. And so other
That's
people measure
amazing.
you, right? And so for me, we would talk about with our team is that we have basically two goals. We want to be the best place to give and receive care. That's it.
That's awesome.
And if we use that as our decision-making kind of prism and our lens, life is easy. Things that don't even need to get considered get pitched.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is it doesn't matter what your industry is. It's valid in any industry because it's very industry agnostic. But I wanted to circle back because you said something that I loved. And I had somebody actually, and it was another military Air Force guy who asked me this question. He goes, well, what if I'm shooting for 80%? And I'm like, well, if in your world, in that space, in that time, 80% is your target, then that is your 99th percentile. Right? It's not a matter of no, 99.99 or it's not, don't talk to me. It's like, if that's what you're shooting for because of all the parameters and everything, and that's going to get you where you need to go and give you the bandwidth to do the other things that are critical, then that is your 99th percentile. So I love that you brought that up. That was great.
Yeah. Well, not all things are equal in the world as much as we'd like to think they are. And not everything is 100%. Not everything's critical. Not everything's urgent. Not everything's routine,
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to understand what those parameters are that surround you, your organization, and what those standards of excellence are from the consumers that are consuming those products and services to, internal or external. And so talk to us a little bit about B99. What is that? How do you use that? How does that work in other people's businesses and in work environments as consult with them and advise them in your practice today?
So what I did, and this was work, but I was like, okay, I worked with so many amazing people who didn't hit 99th percentile performance like we did. And I was like, okay, what do we do different? And it's always a challenge to step outside because it's like breathing. We just do it. You don't, it's like, well, I
Yeah.
breathe. Yeah, that's right. I have to. So I said, what did we do differently consistently that led us to these outcomes? And we would routinely have people say, and it was actually kind of interesting. They'd be kind of angry sometimes. You make it look easy. I'm like, well, okay, you'd rather me look like I've been run over by a truck. I mean, what, but it's like, but what you don't see are all the little micro adjustments we make because we don't get things out of whack. We step in where we need to step in. And so what I did was I went and I really reverse engineered. What did we do that's applicable to anyone, anywhere? And so it's a wheel, it's a guide, it's puzzle pieces, it's drivers, however your brain, likes to think about it. But it's 7 different dimensions or puzzle pieces, as I typically call them now, because people say, well, which one do I need to do? And I'm like, honey, if it was only one, anybody could do it. All right. Your puppy could do it. It's the interplay of all of them. And the fact that, as you've already talked about, things don't stay static. So even if you had it nailed and perfect and flawless, and then something happened, you have to go back and now go, okay, how do we do this now? How do we get back to that point now that our world has changed or we changed our world? Whether it was done unto you or you did it yourself, doesn't really matter. And so there's questions in there. And around each puzzle piece, there's a question for the leader. There's a question for individual team members. There's a question for teams. And there's a question for the organization as a whole under each of these. So no great surprise, the first one's clarity. It's been fascinating to me how few organizations and individual people have it. Or if they do, they've got clarity that's in opposition.
Right,
and you see
right.
this a lot with different silos in organizations, because for you to succeed means I sort of have to fail, or you look good and I kind of like, eh. And so that's unfortunately a built-in problem a lot of organizations have. And coming from a quality background, that just glares at me. It's like, well, you're getting what you're asking for. The fact that you don't really want it is not anybody's problem. It's your fault. Sorry. I mean, it's just you're getting what you're setting people up for. And so there's questions there. The next one's calendar. People, oh, yeah, do I have a calendar? It's like, no. If I look over your shoulder, is what you say is important? Is that what you're working on? These are kind of leader questions. And so there's general questions around there. So this is actually on my website. Anybody can go look at it. There's they can get a quick download on it. There's also, because I'm a glutton for punishment for me and everybody else, I made a couple quizzes. One that's like, where are you really doing amazing with this framework, because that's what it is. And where are you kind of, these are probably biting me because I'm not, we're not doing this as well as we could. And so people can take those quizzes and, then kind of go, where am I? So on your own, you can move yourself along and go, okay, obviously when we work with people, we go a lot deeper. And so but it's fascinating to me. And I know you know this, you have things that you've made what you thought was so clear, but for all of us, our experience colors our interpretation.
Hmm.
So one of the drivers of the puzzle pieces is challenge, right? Setting the bar really high. Well, I was working with a pharma sales team, and they go, well, does that mean setting targets that, we can't meet? And I'm like, oh, thank you for asking me that question. No, it doesn't. Right.
Right.
It doesn't. Right. It was just so, it's like, oh, and even the clarity. The number of times people were like, oh, well, our clarity is we want to do X. And I'm like, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm going to be. I don't care what you want. What is it you exist to do? Because if you're not delivering it out, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So to me, you lack clarity. So we're very self-focused. And so it's fascinating to have to kind of go, no, 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 no. This is outward, right? This is how you deliver an amazing experience for your people and for the ones that you serve, wherever and however you serve them. So it's always interesting to see the blind spot. So on your own, people will make some of the assumptions that aren't built into the framework, but certainly working with people, we dive a lot deeper and go into what they can do. On that note, I'd love to just make an offer to your listeners. If they'd like to take me up on it, do the 2 quizzes, and then they can reach out to me afterward. And I'm happy to spend about half an hour with them, just kind of going through a little bit deeper, their results, their outcome, what they found, to give them a bit more of a lift. Because to me, this is how many organizations can we get to that level? Right? Yeah. That's really why this is out there. And so it's questions.
That was very kind. And we'll towards the end of the show, we'll kind of get some contact information from you. We'll make sure we put them all in the show notes and people have access to these kind of things. That's really cool, because she does some excellent work. Anything Cheryl does is excellence. I can certainly attest to that, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute as well. You talked about people, and how you execute the B99 program with clarity and what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the focus around that and what they should be doing versus what they think they're doing. And it is, as a business coach, I see very similar things as well. People have different definitions of excellence. They have different definitions of clarity. Like, oh yeah, we're clear. And I ask them a few questions and they can't give me good answers. And I keep asking questions. And I'm like, yeah, you really don't have clarity. Like, well, we have a mission statement and we have like, yeah,
it's on the wall.
Yeah, but I walked around and asked 10 employees what that was and none of them knew it. So really, does that matter? Right. Yeah. And so I think that's really, really, evident out there. I think people are so busy, they don't take enough time to really think through the biggest and most important questions that they need to be thinking about on a consistent basis. One of them being, what is I asked a client this just this morning. We were talking about his CPA business, and I said, so what exactly is the experience you want to give them? And his answer was very internally focused. One, he didn't really have a good answer. He was kind of fumbling and mumbling around it a little bit, and he was kind of like trying to pull it out of thin air. And it was very internally focused. Like, well, we want to give them a place to send their tax information, and then we'll work on it and then give it back to them in a timely manner. And I was like, well, great, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, what is the experience you want them to have when I pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, I've got some things going on that's going to affect my taxes. How do we work through that? What are the things I need to be thinking about ahead of time? When tax season does roll around and you're doing my taxes, how much lead time do I need for that? What is the amount of time it's going to take you to work through that? What is that experience going to be like? What do you want it to be like? Do you want, when people write you a 5-star review, what do you want them to say about you? Right.
Mm.
And boy, I really, really challenged him because he's preparing, after the new year, he's starting to think about the
You don't
tax
have a
season.
life for 4 or
Right.
5 months. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And
Oh,
last year was absolute pain and suffering for him in this situation, for a number of reasons. Some of them in his control, some of them outside of his control. But I wanted to get your opinion on the folks you're working with and utilizing your program of the B99 plus other things you have that you use to help elevate people and drive performance. Like, what are some of the common mistakes? What are some of the common things you're seeing out there that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing? And what are some ways, you would challenge people to think a little bit differently around that?
no, great question. So I think you've already hit on one, huge one, and it's foundational, is people think they have clarity and they don't. And they they answer like the questions in the framework, or they answer your questions, and it's about them.
Hmm.
And it's not outward focused. And it's just been, it has really shocked me the number of times I go, no, 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 no. Okay. This isn't about you. This isn't about you getting your bonus. I'm happy for you, and that's really cool, and bonuses are lovely. That's not what this is about. And so that is a really clear indicator that we're very much thinking about us. And unfortunately, in the last few years, we've gone bonkers thinking about us and kind of elevating the individual above the kind of the collective organization. And if I can scream louder than you, then I deserve the attention, kind of thing. So that's one thing that the framework really highlights when people answer the questions. And I hear them all coming from a self, kind of looking at me kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The other things that I see people struggling with relate to that. They relate to, we don't have clarity, we don't have the experience in mind that we want people to have when they work with us, or we want our people that we work with to have. And so we have allowed our eyes to be pulled away from what we're here to do and become, in some ways, kind of a pacifier, And so it's like, okay, well, you're not happy. Okay, let me do this for you. Oh, okay, well, you're not happy. Oh, but shoot, no, what you're not happy about is going to make them, we've got this, and we have just moved away from what we exist to do.
Hmm.
And that damages trust. One of the things that we all see it, and if you've ever been blessed with a 360, which most of us have, the gist of it is, if people leave, it's because you're bad, right? You've done things wrong, you're bad, it's all about you. And there is certainly truth to that. I have left managers and bosses that I'm like, whatever I did to be bad, I didn't deserve you, right? Now, at the
Right.
same time, I learned from them, because whatever you did that made me feel wretched, I don't ever, ever want to do to anybody else. So even in that situation, you can learn and rotate it and use it differently. But we forget that trust, the term I use is circular trust. So if you and I work together and I report to you, certainly I need to trust you. But what we don't talk about is, you need to trust me too. And everybody else on the team that works together, we need to trust each other. And we don't talk about that. We like to point the finger at the boss. And we don't talk about the fact that, to me, this goes all the way around. And when that breaks down, and I see it really broken right now, because of what leaders are allowing themselves to be pulled into, and it's not running their organization. It's become kind of a daycare situation in a lot of places. And so you've got leaders that are exhausting themselves, trying to keep everybody happy. And, but we've got to meet our targets too. And so they end up trying to be the one to meet the targets, kind of in a vacuum. And then nobody's happy. So everybody's exhausted. And it's a really vicious, fast spiral down.
Hmm.
And I just see way too many people living there right now. But it's addressable, but it also requires that everyone up and down the organization says, things have changed so much. So maybe how we defined success 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what our long range plan was, maybe that's not doable anymore. And maybe that's the wrong thing to be shooting for. And a lot of people, to your point, aren't thinking about the basic things they need to be thinking about to build on. And they're certainly not doing that kind of thinking, because that's hard. And it can feel like admitting failure. To me, it's like, no, you have the guts to really look at what's going on around you and going, what has changed? To your point about the CPA, what do you control and what's being done unto you? You know, there's always that mix. Always. I don't care what it is.
Right.
So to me, the leaders are the people that have the guts to go, you know, just going, I'm a little engine that could, I'm just going to go harder and harder on the original goal. That's not leading. That's following a rut. And so do you have the willingness to go, you know, it's not like it was. And trying to act like it is not working. It's just not.
So how do you, in your practice, how do you kind of initiate that change? How do you get through to leaders? How do you get through to some of these teams to get them to think differently, get them out of the reactiveness, get them out of the things they're doing that's kind of going the wrong direction, and implement change, get acceptance and buy-in and all of those things turn around to get them to achieve 99% of the goals.
I think the reality of us as humans, and I have yet to see this really disproved, I'd love to, but I haven't yet, is that most of us will only change when staying the way we are, to be delicate about it, sucks more than changing.
Yep.
You know? And so if the beauty of being kind of an outsider is that I can see the things that other people don't see, because many are exhausted just pedaling as fast as they can. And everybody kind of gets used to each other. They get in these rhythms and patterns and they don't see them anymore. And, you know, you come in from the outside and you're like, well, no. This is not serving you, you know, and for me, it's the same thing. And I just call it out. And one of my many things that in the past that I did was mediation. I had a mediation practice. And mediation, if any of your folks aren't really familiar with it, is designed as a form of kind of conflict resolution, decision making, call it what you want, that presumes that both parties or groups have the ability to kind of work through and come to a solution that works for everybody. And the reality is, whether you're working with business leaders or you're working with families or you're doing a real estate deal, it doesn't matter. If I'm not getting what I want, I get agitated. And again, being human, when we get agitated, none of us are at our best. And then if you won't give me what I want, then I get more mad at you and I get more tunnel vision, and then it just, it escalates. And so I bring that same comfort with saying the hard things without harshness, but just like, yeah. I said to one person, I said, do y'all realize you're paying like $1,000 an hour to argue over a hibachi you could replace for $50? If y'all want to do that, that's okay. But that's where you are right now. And I have to call that out to you. And it's the same sort of thing with businesses, right? If this is working for you and you like the way you feel and you like what it feels like in your organization and your people are enjoying what they're doing and you're delivering and your clients would be just devastated if you cease to exist, then you rock on, you keep going. But if any of those things are not true for you and you're not willing to live this way anymore, then it's time to make some changes. But absent that willingness to go, I'm willing to do some things differently because this kind of sucks,
Yeah.
It's really what it, and that's like, I'm not being critical because we're all that way. But that's the beauty for me, of being able to sit outside and go, not only have we been able to deliver on it, we've been able to help other organizations climb out of whatever they've gotten themselves into. And it may have been what they were doing was fabulous 5 years ago, but they're trying to still do that same thing. It's not working.
Yep.
And it's just, you can't keep doing that. And so it could be that. And like I said, some of my clients are like, we just need to think differently because the world has changed. And if we don't think differently, then we're not going to be able to survive and thrive. And this could be a multinational pharma company, right? So it's at that level. I've had people that have built an amazing organization in the energy industry. And they had allowed some things to happen, and then they tried to handle it and it didn't go well. And then they were like, not doing this. No, I'm just gonna, I'm like, you're doing a mix of Russian roulette and ostrich, right? It's just not working, it's not working.
Yep.
And so it's really just calling it out and saying, here's how we get out of this. And then just helping people get out of it,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that are needed out there today, obviously clarity. Most people out there, think they have clarity, but my definition of clarity, your definition of clarity, and other people's definition of clarity aren't really probably the same thing. And so if you think you've got clarity, have a conversation with one of us and let's see if you really truly have clarity. The other, aside from that, I think the other thing that's really truly kind of missing out there as things are evolving and shaping and taking form, and all of the things going on in the economy and the workforce and the people and hybrid, work environments and all the things going on there, is really about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of accountability across organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and there are leaders that don't like to hold themselves and others accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to prevent you from succeeding in your organization, period. You will lose the competitive edge to your competitors. You will lose talent that will walk out the door because nobody wakes up and says, hey, it's a great day to go work for a blind leader that's leading us in a blind way. It's a great day to go work for people that have no vision or no accountability or no respect or no whatever, right? Like nobody wakes up and says, let's go do that today. Everybody wants clarity. Everybody wants to be utilized to their maximum potential. Everybody wants to contribute to a greater good. So I love how your what you do and how you do it and how that wraps around people, and you've been able to kind of systemize that and customize that to people's work environments to elevate them, grow them, lean into them. And I think that's amazing. And so one of the things is we, as this episode is really gone by really, really fast today. One of the things I want to make sure that we talk about, because it is absolutely amazing, is your book called Face to Face. It's a leadership based book, based on some of your worldly travels around the world, and it's I have gotten a copy of the book. Thank you for that. It is phenomenal. I've read and studied leadership for 30 years. I've read books on presidents and sports figures and important people, and I have literally studied this for 30 years.
Kudos to you.
And I'm pretty good at leadership. I know quite a bit about it, but when I got your book and I read this particular book, the way it's written and illustrated and just, I mean, I haven't read a book that was this level of quality yet, ever. And so I want you to talk a little bit about this book, what inspired you to do the book, and where people can, get a copy of it. Because I guarantee you, everybody that watches this show, among all the other leaders of the world, need to read your book.
Wow. Wow. Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So the book was not intended. I thought my first book would be about the kind of the B99 guiding questions framework. But in 2019, I went on a horse safari, which I didn't even know was a thing. I'm like, oh, so a safari in and of itself isn't dangerous enough. You want to be on a horse, a prey animal, in front of a predator that can make you dinner. Sure. Sounds brilliant. A friend of mine invited me who happens to be a CPA as well. But we had a business together years ago and we've stayed in touch and had horses together. So I'm like, okay. So it was a year and a half in the planning. And I really, at that point, just wanted to go have fun, come back alive, right? This was got to be the goal. And literally, and I mean this literally, you get there after a very long trip and you get on a horse that first night, that first afternoon. And they want to basically see, can you do what you said you could do? Because it's for experienced riders only, because you can get everybody killed if you're not an experienced rider, right? So did you, because if you weren't candid and had clarity about your real level of experience, you would not be allowed to ride the rest of the week, which I applaud, right? Because you can put everybody at risk, horses, animals, everybody, people. And so on the very first ride, though, I had all of these things, and I'm like, I wasn't really excited on the first real ride. I was like, I didn't know this was what this was going to be like. And it's like, and I can't leave. I can't leave. I can't just say, I'm taking my toys and I'm going home. My horse and I are going back to the barn. No, you're not. Right. And so, and that very first encounter, I thought of all the leadership principles and the team dynamics and the organizational outcomes. And so I thought, well, I'll do, a few blog posts. That's cool. And I'm a photographer. I didn't take any images from horseback because number one, I'm too anal. And number two, I really didn't want to die. It's just not, I wanted to be in the moment. I wanted to remember and kind of really absorb what that felt like. And then on the second day, I think I'm like, oh, shoot. It's going to have to be a book. There's just too much, And so the book is intentionally organized, to your point, in a really different way, because I didn't want it to be your typical leadership book. It is a coffee table book with, photo quality paper, because my images are in it. So I did take quite a few images, and they're in the book, scattered throughout. I also had a custom illustrator who's just incredibly gifted, to kind of help me kind of pull the themes together. But each chapter is divided into two different sections. The first is just my best ability to tell you the straight up story of what it feels like to be on a horse, looking at a rhino that's going, well, what are you? And you're going, oh, I never thought I'd be this close, right?
Wow.
So what does that feel like, really? What does that, because most people will never have that experience. It's like you're riding inside the zoo. Because there were no walls. Animals could come into our camp at any time. So we were inside their living space. They weren't, we weren't separate from them. And then the second half of each chapter is, what's the leadership principle I pulled from that encounter? And one of the things that absolutely fascinated me was when I would be talking to people about the principle, the number of people that would go, oh, well, yeah, I had a leader that did this and it was horrible and it could be about this and people don't feel safe. And I'm like, wow. For me, it's about what can you do, right? What do you need to pay attention to? What are the pitfalls? But what can you do? And the number of people that came in with a really negative, bad concept was striking to me. And so once I pulled that leadership principle, I went and sourced about 25 leaders from around the world, many of whom I had yet to meet, roles from, executive VP of, of a Unilever division to somebody who runs one of the best Chick-fil-A's in the US. All over the map. So that you can learn from different people what they actually do. And so the questions I asked them to get to the principle weren't your standard. And I told them, I said, please do not say to me, teamwork is important. Like, yeah. No. I want people to be able to go, how did you do that? Because if I'm dealing with something like that, or I want to tee up something in an amazing way, what did you do to rock that principle, whatever it was? So that's the way the book is organized. And so it's available both as the hardback, which is the one that you have, which I have the bias for because it feels really amazing, looks amazing. You can go back and forth to it.
It's
There's also an
incredible.
ebook, that's available on Amazon. It's not going to have that, in my opinion, it doesn't have that same feeling, but it's certainly a different format and it's available. Some people want both. I had somebody say, well, it's got too much good stuff in it, but I can't mark it up, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but those are the two ways that people can access it. So it's available through my website directly, or it's available as an ebook through Amazon.
Well, I tell you what, if you're looking for something different, you can go to Barnes and Noble and find any kind of default generic, book out there on leadership. Here are the 8 characteristics of a great leader. And here are the 8 steps to building a great leadership, whatever enterprise. And, those are all good and well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those. Those are good. If you've read enough of those and you got those basic concepts, Cheryl's book, I think, in my opinion, is really for, a seasoned leader that wants to understand things on a deeper level. Like it's very straight talk, kind of get real good tidbits and secrets from leaders that have gotten out there and have innovated and have broken new ground and really know how to navigate the trenches of bad days and enjoying the highlights of good days in that whole journey. And I like how she illustrates that around her safari and that whole experience is phenomenally written and illustrated. It's just a top-notch book. Even the packaging of the book was just top-notch. Like I've never ever had that experience with a book or a book writer before. So it's really different and exceptionally well done. So kudos to you, Cheryl, on a job well done with that book because it's certainly different in a very good way. So, Cheryl, how do people get a hold of you if they have questions? They want to learn more about B99 and about Recalibrate and how you can help transform and do great things and overcome the challenges, and everybody's stuck in the mud right now and what to do, where to go, how to do that and achieve top levels of performance. If they want to learn more about your book, buy the book. How what is the best way for them to contact you and engage you?
Ah, great. So, depending on people's preference, obviously through the website, and that's recalibrate.today. Um, Email Cheryl at recalibrate.today, LinkedIn if they prefer that. I know you'll have that in there, so I won't put that in.
Yeah.
But as I had said earlier, I mean, Amazon has the ebook. My website has the book available for purchase on it. You won't get the hardcover on Amazon. I wasn't willing to pay them, umpty squat sums of money for the, because it's like I'd make nothing on the, on
Right.
the book. It's like, oh yeah. So but I cover the cost of shipping. It's actually got a money back guarantee. If somebody were to get it and not love it as much as you do, it's like, fine, no questions asked, you get it back. And as I said, there's the quizzes. You'll have the links for people to do the quizzes where they can go and just kind of look at the B99 guiding questions framework. It's on my website. It's not hidden. Right. Go look at it, and then, as I said, the offer is certainly open. They just need to reach out to me via email after they have done their 2 quizzes and just say, hey, they were, listening, counted on this podcast, and they'd love to take me up on the half hour just to kind of dive a little deeper. And then obviously if they want to go further, that's certainly something that we can just see if it makes sense at that point. But those
That
are
is
probably some of
awesome. Well,
the
thank you so much for your kindness of giving people an opportunity to take your quizzes and assessments and kind of feel things out and take advantage of those resources and your time. Your time is valuable. You're a top notch leader and executive and professional out there, and to give people your time is one of your most important assets. So I think that's very kind and generous of you. And so I'd encourage you out there listening to take advantage of Cheryl Mobley's offerings. And she's just a wonderful person, very high energy, good spirit, and just such a positive person to be around. You can get a lot of value from. And so that's it for today's show. We're going to put all of these things, contact information, all things about the book in the show notes as well. So if you're, driving down the road at 7:00 in the morning, driving to work and you're listening to the podcast, you don't have a chance to get out a pen and a paper and write all the stuff down. Don't worry about it. We'll put it in the show notes. You can go click on it, copy, paste, whatever, and go look at all the great things about Cheryl and what she has to offer in helping people and all the great ways that she's helping people. And so that's it for today's show. Next week, we have another great, thrilling episode. Next week, we talk about how a man went from rags to riches, literally, how he went from living in a mobile home to being one of the top entrepreneur, to going on the entrepreneur top 500 list. Amazing story. Not going to want to miss that. And we look forward to seeing you next week. That's it for today. Hope you have a great week, everybody.